Hi, my name is Trey Hiller, Director of Sales and Marketing here at Clear Guidance Partners, and this is Eden Minucci, the head of our Legal Operations Department. Today, we're sitting down to talk about the returning back to the office for law firms. Eden, could you just talk to us about the current state of remote work within law firms?
Sure. So for the most part, most firms are back in the office a great deal. Just about everybody is back something between like 3 and 4 days a
Okay.
week. There are some firms that are back entirely 5 days a week, and then there's some firms that have stayed almost completely remote. But most of those firms are ones that were working remotely maybe before the pandemic, or who just found that during the pandemic, it really suits their practice style. But I will tell you that those firms that are 100% back in the office or maybe never actually left the office, those firms are really struggling with recruitment because whenever you can open up and allow people to work remotely, you are accessing a greater and larger pool of candidates. And so what we're seeing is that firms that are 100% back in the office without any option for working remotely, they're having a very hard time recruiting. We've talked to some recruiters. We discussed this recently when we were at the luncheon
Mm.
at the Houston ALA, that those firms are kind of having a hard time. And I think that's something that employers need to think about is if there is some opportunity for flexibility, that will go a long way in making, employees and potential, employees happier. During the pandemic, we got really used to working from home. We changed our lives. We changed the way that we did things.
Yeah.
And, and it can be very flexible, but need, offering some flexibility so that people can take care of things at home or enjoy that is really, I think, very important into attracting the best people.
Sure. And so, what are some best practices for collaborating between, working from home and being in the office, that hybrid work model?
Sure. Something that we've seen that works really well, I think, is when people have a synchronous days in the
Sure.
office, and that's synchronous, not asynchronous. So what we're seeing that has often worked well is people coming into the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe having Monday working from home and Friday working from home. Some of the complaints that we've heard when we started bringing people back to the office were, why am I here? There's nobody here. Or, I come in when we let people choose their days. I think at the beginning we were letting people, kind of choose the days that they wanted to come back in, but they were coming back in and they weren't able to collaborate with their teams because their team wasn't there. So I think having a regular time back in the office, possibly synchronous time, that allows you to have meetings, that allows you to have food, which everybody always really
Love
likes.
food.
But it allows for people to really get more out of being in the office, and it simply makes sense. But when you are collaborating, when you have people at home and you've got people working, working in the office as well, I think it's important to make sure that that remote work approximates as much as possible what it's like being in the office, and that really is communication.
Hmm.
And so, we've got so many great tools that we can use to collaborate. I mean, we work mostly remotely.
We
I mean, it's
do.
kind of
Yep.
odd that we're here together talking. But, our team works mostly remotely. And so we are using Teams. There's also Slack. There's so many other ways to communicate. But I feel like I see my team a lot because we are constantly talking via Teams. But something that we do, and I know that people kind of complain, is we almost always have cameras on during our internal meetings because I don't get to see people otherwise. And so we have our cameras on, but we also don't really care how people show up. Showing up for a meeting is more than, kind of getting dressed in
Yeah.
business appropriate, where of course, if you're talking with clients, you need to make sure that you look appropriate. But within our team, I mean, we will show up in sweats, we will show up, without makeup on, things that I wouldn't consider camera ready. But we do that just so we can talk with each other and enjoy each other's company. Something that I heard from a partner was that what they regularly do, and I think that this is brilliant, is that when their associates or maybe paralegals are having a virtual, call with a client, they will actually pop into that call. Much like they would pop into the office
Yeah.
when the client was there to kind of show, the meeting isn't with the partner, but they'll pop into the office and say hi and check in on things. So as much as you can kind of approximate that, that is, I think, really important, using all of the tools that we have. Also using tools to give people praise. There's a bunch of different things. We use Motivosity here. There are so many other tools to use where you can give people praise, because when you are not in the office together, you are missing out on those interactions, where those little bitty interactions, those sort of virtual water cooler kind of things,
Hmm.
where you talk with people, you pop in. We do a lot of just checking in and sharing screens and talking, but those, I think, approximating that in-person communication is really important.
And so, as a law firm, as an employer, what are some things to look out for with employees that are working remotely?
Sure. Well, so everybody's different. There are some people who love being in the office. I am not one of those
Yeah.
people. I thrive working at home. But some people really love being back in the office and it's hard for them to be at home. And other people, it's hard for them to be back in the office. So I think when you're in the office, you can keep an eye on people.
Mhm.
You can see how they're working. You can check in with them. But when people are at home, you can't. And I think something that is really important is onboarding, to make sure that when you're bringing people on board, especially if they are in the office and then also working from home, make sure that you are checking on them and having that communication. So actually creating regular check-ins, even if it's something that you didn't do before,
Sure.
is really important to have. Also, I would say at least on a daily basis, make sure that you are touching base with people who are working remotely. And I think that there needs to be more attention paid to projects, to reviewing projects together, and making sure that you give that feedback. Those are all kinds of things that kind of happen just naturally when we're in the office together. But when we're not, it's really important to make sure that those things happen. Some people struggle, and when they're not in the office, you don't hear from them. There may be, it's good to check in and see how a particular thing is going. But I think really it comes down to a lot of communication, but making that communication scheduled and intentional.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so, on the flip side of that,
Mhm.
as the employee, what are some things to look out for?
So, as the employee, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of a model for one of those. When I first started working from home, I was trying to get everything done at home. And so I really had to realize, just because I can do the laundry doesn't mean I should do the
Yeah.
laundry during the day.
Yeah.
So I think creating, one of the most difficult things from being at home is that we don't have a really clear work and sort of regular life balance, or a line between that. It is so easy to hop on the computer. Once I've stopped, I can hop back on at 6 or at 7 and just get some more things done. So I think it's very important to have a clear definition between work and home. It is much easier to kind of, I mean, I thrive because I do more work when I'm at home, but I think it's very important for people to monitor themselves and sort of prioritize that kind of self-care. When I'm at work, people make sure I eat lunch. When I'm at work,
Yeah.
I take breaks and I go to meetings, but when I'm at home, sometimes I don't do those things. So prioritizing self-care, understanding that when you're working from home, you're really working from home, making sure that you create a good space for yourself to get that work done. Have an office area or someplace where you can set that set aside from everything else. So that's really important. And making sure that you just kind of have that break and that you do take a break from work. And even if you can hop back on, maybe you don't make that the norm. You make
For
that
everyone
sort of more the
else.
exception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so
Sure.
much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I hope you found this helpful. I know that we will continue doing these little segments of how to operate in a law firm.